Hi and welcome to another episode of SSW TV. I'm Marlon Marisha and today I have Dan Keegan with me. Hi Dan.
Hey Marlon.
Dan's from Mindjet and we're going to be demoing the Mindjet product. It's actually made for SharePoint. It's a plugin and we saw it a few weeks at the SharePoint conference and we're so impressed we said we've got to get the guys on the show. So today Dan, we're going to discuss a few issues there are with SharePoint has and end user adoption and that kind of thing. Before we start, can you tell us a little bit about Mindjet, what you guys have been doing in the last few years?
Absolutely. So Mindjet provides a visual tool that helps teams connect around ideas and documents and really get more work done and be more productive. Right? We've been a Microsoft Gold partner for 9 years running, and we work with about 80% of the Fortune 500.
Okay, great. And last week we were having a discussion and you told me a few statistics that I, as a SharePoint consultant was pretty impressed with. I don't know if I don't get out much, but I was, and I said, look, can you come on the show and just tell us a few of these stats because it's pretty exciting for the SharePoint community. Absolutely.
So SharePoint is Microsoft's fastest growing product, and they recently reported that they're deployed at 78% of Fortune 500 companies. They've got about 120 plus million active users, and they're currently signing up 20,000 new users per day.
Wow.
Pretty exciting.
It is, and I guess it just goes to show that SharePoint is a success, and that's a good thing. You want to invest into success.
Absolutely.
And 20,000 users a day is pretty exciting, and that's why companies like yourself have come along and said, well, how can we make the experience better?
Absolutely.
But why SharePoint? I mean, it's really popular. Why is SharePoint so popular?
Yeah, good question. So McKinsey reports that through the effective use of collaboration tools like SharePoint, knowledge workers can gain in productivity by up to 25%. So imagine 25% more products, 25% better and more timely project execution within your company, right? So there's a huge goal and a pie to be had. Now, why SharePoint is so uniquely positioned to provide this, especially to the enterprise, is for two reasons. The first one being that Microsoft is a trusted name. It's a trusted brand. You know it. You trust it. It's not a company that's sprung up in the last year and is suddenly asking for your trust without proving it. Secondarily, SharePoint leverages your existing investment in security and membership and permissions so that all of your content stays within your own server environment. Yep. So for very security-centric organizations, it's really the best route possible.
And I've noticed that SharePoint is really popular in the information worker space, so accountants and financial services and those kind of IT, those kind of businesses. But a lot of businesses are benefiting in the non-traditional type of business like building and construction and that kind of thing. Have you guys seen a lot of improvements for businesses using SharePoint in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. And SharePoint use with those types of organizations where you've got folks like maybe an electrician or even folks who are setting up cable connections or folks who are in the field using hard hats, folks like miners, builders. The combination of SharePoint and mobile is making information and process and important content available to those people in the field so that it isn't just bankers and IT professionals who are using it. It is also folks in major mining, construction, government, some of these other sort of non-traditional areas.
Yeah, that's what I love about what Microsoft's doing with SharePoint. They're reaching out because a lot of those Fortune 500 companies, 78%, you pretty much got all of them. So you have to go out into the smaller business market now, and that's what they're trying to do with, I think, Office 365 and SharePoint Online, which is very exciting. But we're praising SharePoint, and it's great. We love it. But there are issues with SharePoint, and typically around user adoption and user experience, and that's where Mindjet really shines and adds to SharePoint. So can you share with us some of those experiences, and then we'll look at some demos and how Mindjet helps. But yeah, what have you seen?
Absolutely, good question. So ultimately, while SharePoint is growing very quickly, it's a very successful, very profitable product, and it's deployed in all of these places. Forrester Research did recently report that of IT administrators and SharePoint administrators, folks who are actually deploying SharePoint, 37% of them reported that they didn't have the type of user adoption or the type of user experience reported to them that they had hoped for, right? And SharePoint is a huge investment. You spend not only the money on the licensing, but a ton of money on the deployment, the optimization, the training. So you really want to give people incentive to use this great and powerful tool. Now, the question is, I guess, why are people sometimes having a difficult time? And ultimately, the first reason is that although SharePoint has brought a lot of power to storage of information, right? You can get it from anywhere in the world, regardless of your function, regardless of the device you're using. What it's become in a lot of situations is kind of a glorified file cabinet, right? And Forrester Research reported in the same report that knowledge workers like ourselves spend 3 to 5 hours a week looking for content, repurposing content, querying through different folder structures, and it becomes a hassle. So the question is, how can we make our content more accessible, easier to find, more easier to get and to act on? And here at Mindjet, we really hope to kind of fill some of that gap.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is just have a quick look. I'm going to pull up Mindjet here, and what we've got here is just the Mindjet interface, right? And as you'll see, one of the most obvious things is that it's a visual canvas, right? So it's a place where information, a simple document like this one, takes on a bit of a new life, right? We've got its priority level, where it lives within SharePoint, who's accessed it recently, right? Some of the dates around that. But what we can do is we can say, okay, you know what? I know that there's some content in SharePoint that I need to find or to have access to. Now, I could do a simple search through SharePoint. We get a lot of reports that that's difficult to do. So what we can also do is we can query from SharePoint directly.
Why is it difficult to do?
Well, so one of the things that that folks say is that I went in and I searched in the search bar, but nothing came up. And as simple users like myself, like our marketing manager, we don't understand why we're not seeing what we're supposed to be. And it could be something as simple as we're in the wrong site or the wrong folder, or our parameters aren't set quite right. And when we try it once or twice and don't immediately find what we're looking for, in our minds we say, well, you know what? Next time I'm just going to store it on my desktop.
Yeah. That's quite common. That's
right. And then we've got this powerful collaboration solution, SharePoint, and it doesn't do any good because all of our information lives on our desktop, right? So we want to reward people and make it easy for them. So as I'm setting this up, I might say, okay, well, what things do I want to find? And we can choose things like documents or tasks or even custom list items, things that have been set up specially. For folks who are interested in seeing maybe the entire site, all of the information within a particular site, we can map that entire site with a couple clicks by using the Mindjet Site Explorer.
Okay.
Now, we have a very prominent automaker within the United States that's licensed Mindjet specifically just to map their sites. And then to take that mapped out, blown out kind of visual view of information, put it back into SharePoint so that now their teams can navigate it that way, opening and closing branches and so on. Now I'll just give you guys a quick look. To keep it simple, we'll go ahead and find some documents. I'm going to choose which sites I want to query. Now, I just copy paste my SharePoint site URL in here, that it gets added to a list. Now I've got it forever. As you can see, I can filter based on document name, date created, who owns it, who created it, when it was last modified, whether it's checked out. By any number of these criteria, purpose of this will keep it simple. I'm just going to find everything associated with our Connect for SharePoint product. finish this up. And what it's going to do is it's going to comb across the multiple sites and subsites that we've asked it to, and bring us all of the documents that match our query.
Okay.
So this will just take a second. It's going to bring up maybe 30 or 40 of these.
So these are all within the sales site?
Absolutely. And within our sales site, we've got several subsites. Okay. So we've got one called Connect for SharePoint, right? We've also got one called our old sales tools. And depending on how many sites we wanted to comb to find this information, we could set up 5, 6, 7, 10 different sites to query against.
Okay.
And what it's going to do...
So we're seeing this visually. Mm-hmm. How's that different to if you went into the sales site in SharePoint and just did a search for that document? You would just see a list of documents which you'd have to filter through.
Absolutely. And you'd only be searching maybe one site at a time, whereas we can query multiple sites. Okay. Additionally, what we can do is now we can reorganize this information to make it a bit more useful for our particular purpose. Mm-hmm. So maybe half of these might be case studies, right? Half of them might be old budgetary documents. The other half might be executive summaries from similar projects. So what we want to do is just kind of reorganize them so that our user community, maybe my group, my sales team, can find what they're looking for a bit more easily. So I'm going to call one of these buckets case studies. I'm going to call one executive summaries. And what I'm going to do is just grab, these 3 pieces here, that are from our Connect for SharePoint site, drop them into this bucket. These maybe 3 pieces here are also case studies. So even though they're not from the same site, they deal with some of the same content. So I'm just going to go ahead and reorganize them to better suit our particular purposes. And we're not actually changing the taxonomy of the site, but what we're doing is making it easier for our folks to navigate. Now I can close them up, segment them, and they don't clutter our overall view of things. And what I can do now is I can take this reorganized group of information and embed it right within SharePoint's secure site environment. So this is Mindjet's intranet. As you can see, this is the front page. When I go to our sales portal, what you'll see is our Mindjet web part here. Okay. What it's going to do is it's going to take a second, and then it's going to show us a map of information from this site. Right, so as a user, we've been getting feedback that rather than using this search bar and toggling around here, being able to just say, okay, what am I looking for? Navigate around the map. Okay, what I really want are some of our old training documents. Open it up. And each of these links will take us to a particular document that we can then open up, digest, make changes to, save back. And we're really finding that users, when they're able to open and close branches and navigate based on a more sort of visual, logical environment, they're really enjoying that experience and are more likely to come to SharePoint first rather than going back to their share drive or back to their desktop.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That really does make a big difference when you see that to try and because I'm a sales guy as well. And so when I look for documents, often I have to get documents from different departments and at different stages of the sales process, and it's tough. Sometimes you think, I'll just store that on my desktop because last time I couldn't find it.
Absolutely.
And so if I had something like that where I could, say, okay, these are the sales documents and they're grouped, and I could get to them really quickly, it would drive me to say, okay, I might use it. I won't store it on my desktop. But,
absolutely, right. Shame on you.
But even though we know the right thing to do, that's the struggle that all these companies are having, because we know what to do, but if it's not intuitive the first time, you get trained that I'm not going to do that again because I want to be efficient, not use a tool for the sake of using a tool. And SharePoint's a great tool, but it can be a challenge. Absolutely,
and one of the things that's also important to recognize is that as the salesperson who owns this process, you want to make sure that not only you have access to all of the intelligence and information you're drawing from, but that also your manager and your sales team that supports you are all seeing the same source of truth and all have access to the same content you're drawing from. And that's where SharePoint really provides the infrastructure to deliver that shared experience, that collaborative experience.
That's great.
So the next thing that we'll talk about is really around this idea of collaboration, right? And it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, and SharePoint is really, they market themselves, and when folks deploy SharePoint, what they are deploying is a collaboration tool. Now, what it becomes a lot of times is really more of a glorified document storage system, right? Someplace that people go when they need a form or a document, right? And it doesn't have a great mechanism for things like idea sharing or broadcasting the strategy behind a particular project or a set of actions.
Yep.
Now, at Mindjet, that's what we've done well for the last 12 to 15 years, is give folks a collaborative, flexible environment to share ideas. Now, because of the recent, and I'll just go ahead and get back to our spot here. Because of our tie-ins and our closeness with SharePoint, we can now take this idea sharing, this ideation, this synthesis, and put it behind the SharePoint secure firewall so that all of our team has access to it. We can broadcast it out to the organization and make it work. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just going to go ahead. This is, of course, just our sales sort of document portal. I'm going to go ahead and pull up this Mindjet document. I'm going to edit it right within Mindjet's browser.
So is that a special Mindjet list that's been added, or is it a normal list with a Mindjet document inside it?
Good question. It's just a normal list.
It's a normal list. And how did you get the document in there? Is it something you created in your Mindjet application that we saw at the very beginning, and then you uploaded it in?
So that's a good question. We can do it one of two ways. We can create it much like a Word document or any other type of document outside of SharePoint and then upload it. Or we can actually create a brand new document, Mindjet document, from within SharePoint's environment.
Okay.
Right? So there'll be a button for new, right? And from then you can choose to start from a template so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and so on.
And this is a template that you've just opened
This
up.
is. So this is our project charter. Now, for the purpose of this, let's say that we're going to be implementing a new payroll system. Now, what we would typically do, right, is get the team together, grab a conference room, and start whiteboarding it out. And ultimately, whiteboarding, flip charting, these activities are among the most collaborative activities we do as business professionals. The problem is that when you leave that whiteboarding session, you can't take it with you, right? And so it becomes sort of a static relic of something you did rather than what it really should be, which is an ongoing process, an ongoing thinking, planning process. So what we can do is when we take that, say, digital whiteboard and put it within SharePoint, we can now provide this hyperlink to all of our stakeholders and say, you know what, Marlon, after we leave this session, if you have another idea that you feel like will help move things forward, drop it right in here. Pop open this hyperlink, it'll take you directly to this area. You can add your new idea, right? Say that you wake up sweating in the middle of the night because this problem's been on your mind. You can pull it up from home. Drop that link in directly, pull it up on your home PC. More and more people will be pulling these types of things up on their iPad as more and more organizations become comfortable with hosting SharePoint on their iPads and Android tablets.
Because in the past, you'd send an email to somebody and then they'd have to add it, and it can take time. Well, now instantly you can just get it in there and then discuss it at the next meeting.
Absolutely, and a stat that really that I always think about when we talk about this idea of doing our sort of planning and thinking and strategizing is one that was reported by PwC earlier this year, which is that in enterprise organizations, 81% of workers who were polled said that they were confident their organization had the right strategy, the right thinking to sort of move the company forward. Of those polled, only 41% reported that they thought their company was executing and doing the right actions to support those goals. So there's that disconnect between planning and strategy and execution, right? So with things like SharePoint, in conjunction with Mindjet, we're able to broadcast not only our strategy, but do what we'll start to do next, which is actually start to add some of the actions and the execution piece to go ahead and make progress against those goals, all within one central environment.
Yeah.
So what we'll do now is we'll say, okay, maybe our team of 10 folks have been accessing this sort of project charter document over the last 6 weeks. We've built things out. We've hyperlinked right to other documentation. We've added notes and things like priority markers and all of these things to indicate how things fit together. Now we're ready to start to execute on some of these. So I'm just going to create a new sort of set of things here. I'm going to call one of these task alpha. Whoops. And then I'm going to go ahead and have task beta that supports this as well. And what I'm going to do...
So you're making task lists now. For
Absolutely.
each activity or each point, you're making a whole list of tasks that people in the organization will complete.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I'm going to do is just go into my task info pane here. Priority level, right? When do we want to start this? Today. How long should it take? Probably about 2 days. And who do we want to be in charge of this, right? And when I do this, this is another sort of beautiful piece of this puzzle, is that it's going to draw directly from my entire Active Directory of contacts within SharePoint. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and find my colleague Ryan Rudnitsky, because I've entered him before. He's going to show up real quickly as a dropdown. Press enter. And it's going to go ahead and find him. Now I've got him. I'm going to give him this task. Within SharePoint, of course, you can set up things like email alerts and so on. But now what I'm doing is Ryan might end up 3, 4, 5 levels down the chain executing his task. But if we give him visibility into how his individual task supports the overall goals of the organization, he's probably going to do a better job. He's going to understand that this piece is important. It supports the fact that we want to serve our employees better. He's going to execute more effectively against it.
That's great. That's great. So previously, it's hard to get that holistic view, isn't it? You just get a task and you do it, and you think, well, yeah, I'll just leave that one till later. But seeing it like this, you might see, yeah, it's an important task.
Absolutely. And what we'll do now is just give you guys sort of a picture of what a project could look like after 3, 4, 5 months of work, right? So as you can see, we've got our project charter here. So all the things that we spent all of this time collaborating against and thinking about, we've got them all now here within this area. So we've got our priority levels. We've labeled where we have significant cost, and so on. We've used things like tags to tell us which goal is executing against which requirement, right? And all of this sort of the planning and our strategy is now an integral, visible piece of the project. Now what we've also got is the execution piece, right? So bridging that gap between the 81% and the 41%. Within each phase, we've got our work sort of packages here. Within each work package, we've got our individual tasks. And as you can see, each of these tasks is set up with a priority level, a level of completeness, a duration, who's in charge of what. And even in our notes field, we're describing or giving sort of a free-form description of what we want done with each of these tasks. Now, what we can also do is, because Mindjet is not a 100% sort of heavy-duty project management application per se, when we have projects like this, which are running for 550 days across maybe 30 different people, maybe spending multiple millions of dollars, we would do some of the planning and the thinking and the scheduling in a flexible tool like Mindjet, but we can then export it directly to things like Microsoft Project, Primavera. We have tie-ins with things like Basecamp. Or for organizations that are trying more and more to keep their project management 100% within the SharePoint user experience, we can send all of our tasks directly to SharePoint tasks, to a particular project site. And now we can use those tools, which are built to be heavy-duty, cost time analysis tools, and really start to really execute. So what we've done, hopefully, is we've addressed three sort of key issues. The first one being navigation, knowledge management. How can I put all of my content from all the disparate places it lives into one central place, organize it in a way that's easy to find, so that I reward my users for storing it and accessing it here? How can I encourage what we would consider kind of a real collaboration, right? Which is sharing our ideas, thinking, planning. And then how can we transition from that seamlessly into executing against those strategies so that we're sure every step of the way that our actions match our requirements?
That's fantastic. And look, I think all 3 points you made, just around navigation, finding information, collaboration, and project management, I think they're all great. But what I find really exciting is the project plan and the execution, because I think SharePoint is this tool that has everything that you need to have a great project management tool. But it just doesn't do it. It needs something else. It's no Basecamp, but it has everything else and can service the company in a more holistic way than Basecamp and some of these other project management tools. And I really see this as kind of that first next step. If we can get the planning done with Mindjet and get people using it, because that's a real big point, get them the user adoption going and planning their projects, and even either spinning them off into SharePoint tasks or another project management suite. I think that's a great step forward for so many businesses to get a return on investment on what they've already made in their business.
Absolutely.
So that is great. So when we saw it at the SharePoint conference, we went, wow, why hasn't someone thought of this before? But you guys have been doing this for about 12 years, haven't you? So it's kind of an evolution for you to use a great platform like SharePoint.
Absolutely. And and SharePoint provides such an effective environment for doing what Mindjet does well, right? So the combination of the security and the access to content from wherever that SharePoint enables, slap on a visual layer to that helps connect navigation, planning, and execution, and it's really a partnership that the market needs, and the market's been reacting really well to.
Oh, that's great. So look, thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on the show and doing that demo.
Yeah, thanks.
Look, guys, if you liked what you saw, if you have any comments, any questions, leave a comment on the SSW TV website. Go to the YouTube video and leave a comment there, and share this video as much as you can. And more importantly, speak to the IT people in your company, because if SharePoint, you have it and you want to get more from your investment, I think this is a great tool that you could possibly use. So how can people get in contact with you, Dan, if they have more questions?
Absolutely. Well, we've got, mindjet.com, of course, is your best resource. We're also available live on Kent Street here in Australia. So if you go to mindset.com, you can navigate to the Asia Pacific and Australia specific page and find some of our contact details. And give us a shout. We're here to look after you guys.
Well, thanks for coming on. And guys, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
Perfect.
For more developer tips, check out SSW TV. Or better yet, to get your own software project into production, give our guys a call and see what's possible today. Cheers.